It's okay, I've muted it for you. Right. First of all, I just want to say massive thank you for your participation and engagement after last week. I couldn't have imagined it would have created so much positive response and engagement, and just the thoughts that were coming through and the levels that you've taken it to were outstanding. We had personal PARs, tons of personal. I'm still working my way through them, which is brilliant. Please keep them coming if you haven't done it already. We had personal PARs for yellow tees, white tees. We had different wind conditions. We had dry versus wet conditions. We had winter versus summer conditions. We even had the idea of doing a good driving day personal PAR and a bad driving day personal PAR, which I thought was superb. Again, I want to reiterate that the personal PAR idea is related around the understanding that PAR is the average of what we do. It's not what's written on a scorecard. And I want to just kind of reiterate that therefore, or what opportunities does that leave us open to in order to play better golf and have more fun on a day-to-day basis. One of the interesting things that came through was somebody kind of came through and said, I can par all the par 3. So they set themselves personal PAR in the main as a 3 for par 3s. But again, the idea of personal PAR is it's not based on what you can do, it's based on what you do. And I think that's an important distinction to make. And understanding what good performance looks like is equally something I think we can all explore a little bit more. And that's related to par 3s and understanding that Rory McIlroy sets his goal each year to play par 3s in 3 or better. So if Rory is trying to average a 3 on par 3s, I think we've probably got a bit of license to move that up a little bit. So we talked a little bit about the idea of working with and understanding stroke average versus handicap. And I wanted to share with you one of the pieces of work that came through, which I thought was awesome. And hopefully this is all anonymized. But what you can see is somebody's come through and they've kind of gone through, work their score averages out. And I know there's a few of you that do this. And I think these are really powerful numbers. And what they've done is they've set personal PAR based on their last 6 rounds of golf. And I think that's a great way of doing it. I don't think, when we look at averages, there can sometimes be so much data in an average that it starts to become distorted and doesn't move very much. So I think actually having a rolling data or an every 6 round data is a really powerful tool. And I really like this idea. And it's even to the kind of concept of the new, well, handicapping system. Best 8 rounds out of your last 20 and looking at your average score in very simple terms. So this idea of having an average, I think, is brilliant. If we look at the 7th hole, I want you to take a look at that score average there, and it's 5.5. And again, when we're working with averages, obviously when we're playing the game, you can't hit half a shot. So what does that really mean? And what that means to me is that when you play that hole, you're likely to make an equal amount of 5s as you are 6s. On hole number 8, you're more likely to make a 6 than you are a 5. And I think if we understand what our averages are, what we can start to do is measure them down and start to say, well, if my average is 5.5, how can I get that down to 5.25, which means I'm more likely to make a 5 than a 6. And hopefully that will make a little bit of sense to you. So when we start to understand the averages, we can start to work them down. And then what we want to do is we want to say, well, okay, how can I set strategies per hole in order to give myself the best chance of making a 5 and reduce my chances of making a 7, for example. And getting those big numbers off the scorecard is really a key focus for us in getting our handicaps down and bringing our stroke averages down. I wanted to share with you just this kind of idea and concept. We never quite know what's going to happen And I think it's useful. And again, I think I mentioned it last week, kind of underpinning philosophies of this theory is that golf is a game that's played over time. So it's never about that one moment. Golf, the purpose of these strategies are to give yourself the best chances of making birdie, at the same time reduce your chances of making bogey. So that's really important. And there's also an element of luck involved. So whenever you stand on a tee, you never really quite know what's going to happen next. But what I like the idea of is, if it's a little bit of a game of percentages and I'm not quite sure what's going to happen next, if I've got to flip a coin, am I flipping a coin that could get me a birdie, i.e. I'm choosing a strategy that could set me up for birdie, but the other side of that coin means I could be racking up a double bogey, triple bogey, quadruple bogey. And I kind of like this as an image is, am I playing with that coin? Or am I playing with a coin that's set me up for, sorry, on this one, actually, this one is more the strategy of somebody who's playing with a coin, but they're going to make double bogey or triple bogey, whatever they do, because they're just not thinking great and correctly. Whereas this one is the golfer who's kind of, I could make a birdie, but equally that strategy could bring into play a double bogey or triple bogey. Or this golfer is playing with a strategy where they're going to be they're giving themselves the best chance of making birdie, but at the same time, they're reducing their chances of making bogey, but they're not likely to make double bogey or anything higher. So I kind of like that as a visual and as an idea. What strategies am I choosing, and what opportunities is that opening up to me? So what I wanted to do today was go through a couple of scenarios. And although I can't cater for every scenario, for every standard of player, I'm hoping you'll get the principles of these and the understanding of these that you can then apply to your own game at your own golf course. And all of it should be related to your personal par. So if you're on this seminar or presentation and you missed the personal par one, don't worry, because I'm recapping that on Tuesday. If anyone wants to come in and listen again, you'd be more than welcome to. But based on your personal par, we're gonna work with those. And when we're talking about birdies and bogeys, we're talking about that in relation to your personal par. And I think that's an important distinction to make. One of the other things that came through, which I thought was awesome, was a personal par that came with a little bit of a narrative. And I think we all have that narrative in our mind as we're thinking about personal par and why am I coming up with that personal par. And I really love this as an idea and a concept. And I'd encourage you, if you haven't done that, to kind of get that down. But I also want us to think about other options and some what if scenarios. And again, I want to cover that today. But the one thing that stood out here, and the reason why I'm showing you this one, is hole number 6. And hole number 6 is a par 5 for this golfer. And this golfer is about breaking 90. So it's a par 5 for this golfer. And the strategy is based on 2 irons to achieve a position before the water, leaving 100 to 120 yards over the water into the green. And that makes perfect sense. I kind of love that as a concept, and it makes perfect sense. But what it also does is it provides me with the opportunity to say personal par, and just to clarify, personal par isn't about laying up. It's not about being defensive. For a couple of reasons. First of all, I'm not sure that's always the smartest way of playing. And in part of the marketing for this, I mentioned about when should we be defensive and when should we be aggressive? And kind of my answer to that is you shouldn't be either. You should be smart, and you should always play smart, and you should always be looking to make smart decisions. So I would encourage us to reduce, or not reduce, but actually take out terminology like, am I going to be aggressive or am I going to be defensive, or even asking anything related to those 2 words. So being smart is about giving yourself the best chance of making birdie, at the same time reducing your chances of making bogey, but it's also based on an understanding of your game. And this is where I think we can really take some huge strides forward, certainly with the technology that we have access to nowadays, and that you guys have access to at the club at Mill Green. And I'm sure anyone else who's not a member of Green, you're more than welcome to come down and we can start talking more about this. But it's really about understanding your game and your shot patterns. And I just specifically want to share one case study or one example of how that 6th hole might be played. So bear that in mind, that this strategy here is related to 2 irons off the tee, and how we might look at just shifting that and changing that a little bit. So I'm going to take us into here because I think it's important to understand shots. So this is data. This is a 21 handicap golfer, male, late 20s, and they hit shots on the driving range, and that's their shot dispersion. And this is a really important thing for me in using this as a philosophy, is we're not hitting at a target, we're hitting into space. Now, one of the things that's important to work with here is that, or to understand, is obviously the further away that space is from you, the better it's going to be. And also the tighter that space is, the better it's going to be. And that's what good players are good at. So in this scenario, this golfer's, this straight line through the middle is the target line, what we set as the target. So this is kind of might be deemed as their best shot because it started just a little bit left and then finished on target. So that right hand picture there is the golfer's view of that golf shot. Now, this is another shot that they played, started a little bit to the left and finished a bit more to the right. And then this is the furthest right. So when we're making decisions related to shots, it's important to understand, well, what space am I working with? And in this scenario, this golfer's working with 60 yards of space. So if you take this line here and look to the right at the top, you can see that that furthest right ball, that flare out to the right, is 60 yards to the right. Now, 60 yards is actually a really tight margin to work with. That's a really good margin. And I think one of the reasons why I liked this example was because every one of those shots is the same shape. And I really like to see that in a golfer. What I think is much harder to work with is a golfer that, or play with, is a golfer that can hit it and miss it both ways. When we look at those 3 shots together, we can see this one here is the one that finished on target. This middle one is the one that finished a bit further right, and that third one is the one that's finished even further right. So I want to introduce you to a concept that I think could be a real game changer. And that concept is related to shot center. Where is the shot center? Now, this one on the left is actually, although it looks like it's finished in the middle, it's actually missed left, because the shot center is this ball here. So if we were to identify the center of that shot pattern, we would see that that ball pretty much marks where there's equal misses left and equal misses right, equal misses long and equal misses short. And then we can look at how do we use that and transfer that onto the golf course. So that's an important one to understand. I'm also going to introduce you to this when we're at the golf course, and this is the iron play. So you can see again that the average shot was around 150. Now I've left that duff shot in there just because we all hit duff shots. If I took that out, that would be actually a very good dispersion. But we can see the miss is 30 yards to the right and 10 yards to the left. So the shot center is around here somewhere, is this ball here. And I'll show you how we're going to use this on the golf course. Here's the 6th hole. And what I like to use when I'm preparing for a tournament, or if I'm looking at a golf course, is I use a driving cone. So this end area here, this end line here is 275, and this is 240, and this is 200 yards. So what it does is give me some perspective of line and direction, line and distance. When I move the cursor, you can see that we're playing from effectively the yellow tees here, because it works quite nice as an example. And what I'm now going to do is I'm going to input, as close as I can get it, relation to scale, the driver of our example. And you can see that if that golfer aimed straight down the middle, so I'm going to put that line in as well, which is that red line. That red line is equivalent to the white line. Oh, sorry. So that white line there is equivalent.
Excuse me, Mark. Excuse me. I can hear some background noise. Duruv's name's coming up in a box, but either his mic's still on, but I can hear a lot of background hissing and stuff.
Okay, sorry. Let me just see. Did you see a name?
Was it Duruv?
Dhruv, yeah. Okay, cool. I tell you what I'm going to do. I can actually.
You meet everybody. It might be.
Oh, I tell you what.
Possible.
Since my upgrade, I can do all sorts. Look at that. Let me just have a quick look through. Yeah, no, that looks perfect. Thanks, Ian. Cool. Okay. If anyone wants to catch my attention, feel free to use the chat button or just kind of unmute and give me a shout. But thanks for that, Ian. That's cool. Right. So this scenario here is the golfer is aiming straight down the middle. So we'd think that shot that they flushed and it's gone right down that white line, that's their good shot. Now, it might be their good shot, but the pattern of shots is that they miss to the right. So if they aim straight down the middle, that's exactly what their shot pattern would look like. And you can see, when we look at that overview, that we've only got 1, 2, 3, possibly 4, 5, 6 balls in play. The other 7 are kind of out of play and big numbers. So when we spoke last week, we spoke about improvers, worseners, and maintainers. So we've got some improvers here, but equally we've got some worseners here because they're costing us penalty shots. Now, the very simplest thing we can do here is take that shot and move that shot center to the middle, and all of a sudden we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All the balls are now in play. So if our personal par is 5, we've now got a scenario where all of those tee shots, that whole shot pattern is now in play, and they're a combination of improvers and maintainers. There's no longer any worseners. And all that golfer has to do is aim further left and start that ball further left of that white line, and not think that they need to hit it straight, or not think that their goal or purpose is to hit it straight. And this for me is where it links into 2 things. We're trying to do immediately, we're trying to get the best out of what we've got, and what we've got currently is that shot pattern. So what do I need to do to get the best out of this? And if that golfer wants to improve longer term, then we've got to see if we can get that shot center closer to the line. And hopefully that makes more sense. So instead of that golfer aiming straight down the middle, what that golfer is going to be doing is, what that golfer is going to be doing is aiming more on this yellow line here, because that's the line. If you remember, that left ball was out on that white line. So if they're aiming down there, that's what their shot pattern is going to look like. That's the distances they're going to go. I've taken a direct pickup from that TrackMan data, and I've pasted it onto that golf hole, and that's exactly what that looks like. So I think that's quite cool. Now, how does that link into strategy? Well, I've now got 11 balls in play. If I use the ruler on Google Earth for the middle of the green, now I've got a scenario where this one's only 100 yards away from the green, 106 yards away from the green, 105 yards, 108 yards, 123 yards, 136 yards, 145 yards. Maybe they're all presenting themselves the opportunity of playing a second shot to the green. So even though we're asking for a personal par of 5, that still doesn't mean I'm going to lay up. Why wouldn't I take the opportunity to get somewhere on or around the green in 2, making it even easier to get a 5, but potentially bringing in the opportunity of getting a 4. All right, so remember our golfer, he said that he wanted to lay up. So the same golfer in this scenario has also hit some 6-irons, 150-yard shots. And in exactly the same way, I've set up the pickup from TrackMan, and I've laid it down onto that hole. And that's what that would look like. That's what their shot pattern would look like, and that's what it is to scale. So if I again pick up from the middle of the green and I go back 175, 186, 191, 194, 194. So although it's more accurate, potentially, and it's more guaranteed in play, what it's also done is it's guaranteed the idea that I'm not going to get a 4. So by taking the driver and understanding my shot pattern, even if I don't hit a good shot, I've not lost anything. Even if I end up with this ball here at the back, I can still lay up because that was my original plan. This one in the rough and it's not very good lie, I can just lay it up because it's part of my original plan. But on the understanding that I don't really know when I stand on that tee, which one of these shots is going to come out of my shotgun. And I kind of like that as a phrase. When we send the ball out there, we're really firing a shotgun. We're not working with a sniper rifle. We haven't got just one bullet. We could send any one of those bullets out there and we're not sure which one's going to come out. So I think I'd be prepared to play the percentage and say, look, if one of these come out, then I can get there in 2. If one of these come out, that's fine. It's not putting me in any trouble, and I can still lay up and get on the green in 3, making it even easier, potentially to get my 5. But what coin do I want to play with? Do I want to play with a coin that's going to present me with an opportunity to get 4s and 5s, or a coin that's going to give me from the tee 5s or 6s? And I think I'd rather be tossing that coin. Now, we might question the idea, and I have a few conversations about this related to the approach shot and getting over that water. Well, if we understand our shot pattern, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pick up the shot pattern of the 150-yard shot. Oh. So from here, you can see 150 yards is about this ball here. Okay. So hopefully everyone can see that in that box here. And what I'm going to do is lay that on top. So you can see I've played my shot from here. That's the 20-yard shot. That's the duff shot that was down here. And then that means that all of these balls are what likely to have happened based on that shot pattern. So if I zoom in a little bit more, you can see now that that's the golf balls that would have finished around the hole. So again, I like the idea of this because I think when we're playing into that approach, what we tend to think, we get pressured on making the green, or we get pressured about not going into the bunker. And we kind of think, I don't care where that ball finishes, just as long as it finishes around the green somewhere, if not on the green, you've improved your chances of making a 5. If you're not very good in bunkers, and that's why you're avoiding that bunker, again, I'd almost play the percentages and say, well, it's not going to go in the bunker all the time, so I'll take a punt on that. But equally, longer term, well, maybe I'll do a little bit of work on my bunker play. So long as I can get out in 1, it's going to be a lot easier to score. I don't even have to get it close. I just need to get it out in 1. So when we're looking at that approach there, hopefully that gives you an idea that says, well, when we're talking personal par and a personal par 5, I'm not talking about, you have to play these 2 shots. Let's make some calculated risks. Let's understand our game, and let's apply that to help us achieve the best chance of making birdie, at the same time reduce our chances of making bogey. Now, I want to get a little bit deeper. We've got a variety of standards of golfer on the call, and I want to talk. Everybody will have an area or a part of the game where they are going to start aiming at the flag. I think not enough golfers. I think too many golfers aim at the flag aimlessly, and it's a bit annoying because every time I zoom in, it kind of goes into 3D mode, and I want it to stay on 2D mode. But we're there now. So I'm going to talk about playing approach shots to the green. And again, I'm going to talk about, there's a shot pattern. Okay, so this is somebody who's got a 10-yard miss with their approach play. So this one here, and this is their shot center. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a front pin placement in. Just there. And you can see if I aim at that flag, based on any one of those shots that can come out inside that 10-yard radius, I've got all of these balls missing here, and I've got these balls missing here, in the hope that I hit a good shot which finishes here, or my good shot that finishes here. What would happen if we took that swing, that shot center, and we moved it to the right of the flag? Okay, yes, these two have moved further away, but we've now hit a lot more greens. If I moved it back, making it just that little bit more predictive, I can now predict scoring better because I'm hitting a lot more greens in regulation. Let's put a back left pin in and see how that looks. If I move that back and lay that on top, all of a sudden I've got all these misses here. I think the flag is often one of the biggest distractions on the golf course. And I think the flag is really there to help us make a decision on strategy and where should I be aiming. So if I move my shot center now to here, I've only missed 2 greens in regulation. And those 2 are much easier up and down than probably these ones from back here and round here. The only time you should go at a pin, and this is when I'm talking about playing smart, is when your dispersion, your radius, your shot pattern allows you to go at the flag and most balls finish on the green. If it's an interesting one, I haven't got an example today because I just want to kind of generally introduce these as ideas for you and see how you make sense of them. But let's say, for example, there was water on one side and a bunk on the other side. Then what you would do in that scenario is you would choose the lesser of the 2 evils, and you would make sure that your shot center was way to the left. So if you did miss it, you'd miss it in the bunker, and you wouldn't miss it, obviously, in the water, because the bunker's a lot less of a penalty for you. So hopefully that's give you a little insight into some tee shot strategy and how you might make decisions from the tee by being smart, how you might adapt depending on which shot comes out, and then when approaching the green, how you might go about choosing when and when not to aim at the flag. What I find interesting about this one, and this will be so true on so many holes, is if I aim at the middle of the green, I'm actually not too far away from those pins anyway. So your number one goal is just get the ball on the green. Don't worry too much about getting it close to the flag to start off with. So hopefully that's the 6th hole covered. What I'm going to do now is take us to the 10th hole. And you can see what's happened here is our golfer has accidentally aimed down the middle. So take this tee. Again, it's 2 scale. Let's imagine they played a fabulous front 9. They've got all excited. They've told a couple of guys going past the clubhouse how well they're doing, how excited they are for the back 9. They picked up their bacon roll and their takeaway coffee, and now they're standing on the tee really good. They now think they're a bit more like Rory McIlroy, and they've taken dead aim down the middle. They've hit their shot pattern. They've actually hit that flush shot, that centered shot, and now it's in the right-hand rough. Okay. Now in this scenario, we're going to say that that's actually the shot that's occurred. But by aiming down the middle, you can see, again, how these worseners are in place because they're in the trees. So the simplest way to deal with that for that golfer, and I won't apologise for kind of repeating this, is very simply just to have aimed further left, understand that's their shot pattern and play with that shot. Now all of those balls are in play. All of those balls are either improvers or maintainers in getting a personal par. In this case, this golfer wants to break 90. This is a personal par 6. So from that tee shot, what are our options? And I think this really gives me the opportunity, and where I wanted to share with you the concept of reading, planning, and then executing the shot. If you go through this process, it then affords you the opportunity to reflect back on, was it the execution that was the error, or was it the decision making that was the error? Now, in this scenario, if we're not hit a very good shot, it might be that we're trying to make up for what we've lost. Oh, it's in the rough. I've got to try and get it down there as far as I can in order to try and make par. Because again, this is language that gets used because it's written on the scorecard. But if I understand it's a par 6, I've got about 300 yards to cover. And this is how I'd answer the question. Is it a maintainer or is it a worsener? Well, if I've got 3 more shots to get onto the green and I can cover that yardage in 3 shots, it's a maintainer. It's irrespective of how I feel about that previous shot I've just hit it. And I think that's a really powerful skill for golfers to learn, is to let go of how they feel about that previous shot and start preparing and planning for what's coming up. So I've got 300 yards to cover, and I now reading the lie, and I've now got options. So let's say the lie is fabulous. It's a really nice lie. So what I want to do, but I also want to prioritize getting it back in play. Well, what options I do have is, if it's a really nice lie, I know I've got my 150 shot, so I could literally play my 150 shot into this space here, and then from there, well, I know I've got 150 left, so that's what those shot patterns would look like into that green. And again, even in this scenario, I'm going to show you this. Even with my approach shot, if I aim more to the right, I've only hit 3 greens in regulation. More to the left, I've hit 4. And so again, that for me just highlights so much the value of understanding that shot center and what your shot center looks like. So let's say the lie wasn't very good, and let me just lose this. So the lie wasn't very good, but that's okay. I've got 3 more shots. I've just got to break that 300 yards down. What if I just played it 50 yards out? If I played it 50 yards out to here, and then I took my 150-yard layup shot, what I can now do is say, well, my 50 yards is being played kind of around where this blue ball is here at the bottom, because that was that 20-yard shot. It's acted as a nice reference point. I can just lay it up with so 50 yards out, I've laid it up 150 yards down, and that's left me from the middle of the green about 100 yards. And I can cope with that, I can deal with that. So even though you've put yourself out of position from the tee, you've then played yourself back into position. And again, instead of playing with that coin that's going, do you know what, I could pull out a 5-wood from this lie, or maybe if I hit the hybrid and if I get lucky, I'll catch it and it'll get me down there. That might allow me to get a par 5, because I don't want to lose that good score I had on the front 9. And then you end up topping it 20 yards in the rough, or staying in the rough, or putting it out of bounds. Instead of going through that, you can just take that step back and hold on, no, this is a 6, so I've got 3 more shots. Okay, how can I utilize those shots? And if you get lucky and it's a good lie, then yeah, go for it and be smart with it. So I wanted to, let me just check I've covered everything. Yeah, so I just think covering those 2 holes, again, I'm conscious that I've shared a lot and spoken a lot. Hopefully this is record. I didn't press the record button, oh my God. Well, it hasn't recorded because I didn't press the record button. Or did I? Maybe I did, I don't know. I'll figure out in a minute. I've covered the 6th, I've covered the 10th. We've spoken about being aggressive, being defensive. We're going to lose that. We want to be smart. We've spoken about how you understanding your shot pattern and the value of that. Has anybody got any questions related to anything that I've spoken today, or would like to elaborate on anything? Or would like me to elaborate on anything? You might have to put your unmute if you want to talk.
So Mark, I've got a question. Salisbury.
Yeah, go on, please. Perfect.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. How do you work out your shot pattern in the first place?
The easiest way is obviously using TrackMan. So it records that data. Or what you could do is you could, if you can find somewhere where you can hit shots and kind of measure golf balls. If you numbered your golf balls, let's say you had 20 balls, you could number them 1 to 20. You hit those shots into space, and then you can measure where the furthest long, furthest short, furthest left, furthest right is, and you can almost map those out on some squared paper. That's in the good old days. That's how I used to do it. That's how I would have done it. I'd have bought some squared graph paper. I'd have given it a target line, and then I would have mapped my balls out on that squared paper, and that would have given me my radius and my shot center. But the easiest way is to, and we'll do something when we get back. Let's get back, and for you guys that have been engaging in this, you know, let's do something on, let's have a day, or let's do something on the TrackMan. Just get you hitting some shots and start getting you identifying some key clubs.
Okay, thanks.
Good question, thank you.
Mark, I think hi Mark.
Hi,
I think the challenge for lots of hi there, is that our shot pattern simply isn't consistent enough, or that's the feeling we have. So, you know, the example you had, he's hitting everything left to right.
Yeah.
Some of us will hit left to right and then hoik one right to left.
Yeah, perfect. So, what do you think the solution might be there, Julie, putting you on the spot?
Thank you. I guess you've got to try and work out what's the most likely shot pattern and try and get a feeling or an understanding of what do you do over 10, 20 shots on a more consistent basis.
Yeah.
Is the tendency to be right to left, or is the tendency to be left to right? I mean, yeah, in a perfect world, we'd have it exactly the same all the time.
Yeah, 100%. When you're talking about that, so are you referencing to the example I gave you, or the example he hit it left to right 3 times?
Well, I'm thinking obviously if I hit 10 shots,
yeah,
and I probably with my driver would hit 5 or 6, I'd hope right to left, but I know they'll come out and they'll just go right to, you know, it'll go either left to right or just stay right.
Yeah. So this is why I think there's massive value in golfers establishing a consistent shape of shot rather than trying to hit the perfect shot. So this is where potentially it links into practice. And if you've got the opportunity to practice in the garden, one of the things I'd encourage you to do is practice, put either a panel of your fence or a tour stick in the ground if you've got it, and practice consistently starting the ball left of that tour stick or to the right of that tour stick, depending on what your shot pattern is, what your shot shape is. So don't confuse a shot pattern with a shot shape. So I've obviously shown you what these shots look like in that screen on the right hand side, but if that screen was there, you wouldn't have a clue whether those shots were left to right or right to left. That's just where they finished. And as a starting point, that's all you need to know is, right, where am I, where, if I hit 20 shots, where are they likely to finish? And you can't strategize for really bad golf shots. If you hit a really bad shot, you can't strategize for that. You can only be smart with your decision making going forward. But certainly most golfers that I have the pleasure of working with, and most club golfers, they get stuck in perfect. They get stuck in trying to do it better, which is great. We want to get better longer term, but in the moment and right now, work with what you've got. So if you can learn to shape it a consistent way, it kind of doesn't matter how much you shape it. If it's consistently going the same way, it can give you that extra bit of control. And remember, your shot center probably isn't going to be, for most golfers, on your target line. It will be slightly to the right of that or slightly to the left of that. And I love this as a question. I'm really hoping this is, you know, well, I'm not hoping. In my ideal world, you'd all be going, oh, that makes so much sense, and that's absolutely perfect, and I've got that, and I can go away and apply that. But when I first heard about this, it took me by, oh, I'm not sure I understand that. So I'm hoping if at least, if you haven't got the grasp of it, at least there's a, I wonder, I need to explore that a little bit more. I need to understand, let's have ongoing conversations. But there's a difference between shot shape and shot pattern. And the shot pattern is that shotgun look over multiples of shots. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, yeah.
Hi, Mark. Stu here.
Hi, Stu.
Mate, excellent as ever. Very enjoyable.
Thank you.
Mate, you know, when we're first teeing it up, what relevance to where we actually tee it up on the, you know, in the tee box to have an effect on our, you know, picking that ideal point and stuff and things like that.
Yeah.
I sometimes get a bit confused on the tee box where the best spot for me to tee it up is. Obviously, it's unique to me, obviously, but I'm thinking everybody might have a similar problem.
Yeah, no, that's a brilliant question, Stuart. So generally speaking, you would say if you move the ball left to right, you would tee up on the right-hand side of the tee because it gives you a straighter look down the fairway, if you like. And if you move the ball right to left, you would tee up on the left side of the tee.
Okay. So the fellow we're talking about on the 10th, you know, he's just chewing his way through his bacon sarnie.
Yeah.
You'd be recommending him to tee it up on the right-hand side of that tee box.
Yeah. So
And
let me go back here. So I would be saying he would be teeing it up over here.
Yeah.
It would be
aiming left.
up here.
Yeah.
And if we do that, or if he did that, and let me just see if I can move this. So if you remember on the shot pattern here, see this ball on the left-hand side is bang on the target line, on his target line where he was aiming. Yeah. So if we then go back to here and we can say, well, that's that line, and so he should be teeing up on the right-hand side, aiming it down here. If he teed up on the left-hand side, then you see how he's bringing those trees into play.
Yeah.
These trees here. So if he teed it up left-hand side and he's trying to hit that shape, then he's bringing that into play potentially. Whereas if he teed it up here, he's got more space to work with. He's got the freedom to use this space here, and now he's brought all of those shots into play. Remember, this is a 20-something handicap. His goal, longer term, would be to make that dispersion tighter, make that shotgun tighter. So, you know, make it smaller. So that's how he would make the most of what he has now.
Cool. Excellent. Thanks for that, mate.
Thanks. Any other questions? Right. Before you all shoot off then, I've got a little bit more homework for you. Work out, I would massively encourage you to work out your averages. If you haven't accessed Go, how did I do? Then have a look at that, see what your score averages are. Oh, hang on, I've got some on the chat here. Yeah, good. Esther tees it up on the right-hand side as she fades it. Perfect. Yeah, and Tom's coming with some, yeah, great. So Tom's not putting pressure on himself to hit the greens in, from that distance, just get it around the green and then he can pick it up from there. So yeah, good comment, Tom. Work out your averages, set your personal pars. We're going to eliminate those blow-ups. We don't want any big numbers. I want you to think about when you're playing your A game. So let's think about this shot pattern. When I'm playing my A game, what does my tee shot look like? Okay, if I'm playing my B game, what might my tee shot look like? If I've got my C game, what might my tee shot look like? But how can I still make personal par? How can I still achieve par or still give myself the best chance of making birdie at the same time reduce my chances of making bogey from that tee shot? So it'd be brilliant just to, if you've got the time and you've got a peaceful place to sit down, just play in your mind a few holes. A game, tee shot. What does that look like? What does that strategy look like? B game, C game's tee shot. Okay, I've not hit it good, but what can I still do? So when we get back to playing, when we get back on those fairways, when you don't hit it perfect from the tee on the first few holes, it's okay. We're prepared for it. We've catered for it, and we've got a strategy in place. What would also be brilliant, and I'd love you to write this down, is for each hole, can you get a really clear aim point? So as Stu's just mentioned here about teeing up left side or right side, and as Esther commented, based on my shot pattern, based on the consistency of the shape, if I've got that consistency, where would I tee it up and what would my aim point be? Can you pick that out? So when you get back to the golf course, how do you match that up with a landmark, a tree, or something fixed that you can work with? And again, we can look forward then to going back to that, because that should never move. So every time you step on the tee, it's a brand new opportunity to make birdie. And that's how I'd love you to start looking at the game. From a strategy perspective, the further away the golf ball is from you, the easier the hole's going to be. So the further away it is from you, the closer it is to the hole. So yes, as I've highlighted today, I would want you to try and get it as far down there as you can. That's your first port of call. However, if your shotgun pattern was massively wide and very few of those shots would finish in play as improvers and maintainers, then you need to come down a club. And if that's still too wide, you need to come down another club or another club. And that's how you work out what club to hit off the tee. And if that's a 5-iron, because a 5-iron is the most predictable club that puts you in play, then that's the club you should be using to score as low as you consistently can over time. But equally, you should be working towards improving the next club up, or your fairway woods or your hybrids, so that you can start integrating that into your game and you can start to get more predictability in your game with that. So always start with the driver and then work back. And then the last thing I'm going to ask you to do in preparation for next week, what we're going to talk about next week is separation values and different parts of the game and how that influences your ability to score. I'm going to send everyone a survey through, and I want you to, if some of you might have completed this already, but I'd like to have another, obviously based on the constraints we're living in at the moment and the kind of lockdown that we're experiencing, it might have moved some goals. So what I want you to do is have a little think about that and revisit what your goals might be for this year. And I want you to rate your game. There's going to be a rate your game section in that survey. And I want you to rate your game, because then we can utilize that and we can draw some on some, again, real life examples for that next week. Okay, cool. So Esther's just asked a brilliant question. What's your advice on how should you play different in match play to stroke play? Esther plays more aggressive in match play. Brilliant. So my answer to that would be, you shouldn't be playing any different. Because you're in match play, it doesn't mean that your dispersion, your shot pattern changes. And if I give you an example of this, and this is a great conversation to have, Esther, we can pick this up on a more one-to-one basis if you want to. If I bring you to this example here, if I subscribe to the idea of giving myself the best chance of making birdie at the same time reducing my chances of making bogey, then if I'm playing to this front right pin and I'm playing match play and I'm thinking, hold on, let me just pick this up. Oh. Hold on, sorry. I don't know why that's gone like that. So I'll have to try and explain it because for some reason I can't pick it up. Let's say I'm playing match play and I'm thinking I've got to go for this. My partners, if I go at that flag, I could produce those. I don't know which one of those shots is going to come out. So what I would do is I'd want to give myself the best chance of getting up and down. So I'd move that shot center to the right so that whichever one of those shots comes out is giving me more opportunities to get up and down. The thinking behind the idea that, well, if it's match play, it doesn't matter if I lose the hole or therefore I can just go for it, I think is flawed in a sense that if you were good enough to hit it close, or you knew you were going to hit it close with that shot because it's match play, why wouldn't you do that all the time? And I think that's a really interesting concept. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter what the game is, who you're playing with. You've got a 150-yard shot. You don't know which one of those shots is going to come out. So you've got to make a smart decision based on your current performance that says, right, whichever one of those shots comes out, I want to give myself a chance at the putt. I need to give myself the most amount of chances as possible. So hopefully that answers your question. Yeah, cool. Right, guys, thank you. If there's no more questions, thank you so much. Again, I really enjoyed the company. I've enjoyed chatting with you. Hopefully there's some stuff in there. Keep the best, leave the rest. Hopefully I'll hit the record button. I'll send it through for you. And let's keep the communications going. And I look forward to a barrage of emails again. Please keep them coming and keep sharing. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mark.
And, take care. Stay safe.
Yeah, thanks, Mark.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Cheers now.
Bye.
Cheers, Mark.
Bye.